In this topic, we will focus on how to use appendix appropriately in an academic report. Appendix allows you to provide support information that is relevant to your study but too detailed to include in the main body. They can also improve transparency. For example, you can show the materials used in the study and how the analysis was developed. However, an appendix is not a place to include every document connected with the research. Each appendix should have a clear purpose. It should also be relevant, appropriately labeled, and fully anonymized. We will consider three areas. First, what appendix are used for. Second, how appendix should be organized and referred to in the report. Finally, what information should not be included. Appendix contains important support information that would be too detailed to include in the main body of the report. The main report should remain clear and readable. More detailed supporting materials can then be placed in the appendix. For a qualitative report, appendix may include materials that show how your analysis was developed. For example, you may include a coding table, a collected code table, a candidate themes table, or a thematic map. These materials can show how you move from the original data to code and then from code to themes. A candidate themes table, for example, may show which codes were grouped together under each initial theme. A thematic map may show the relationship between themes. It may also show how the themes change during the reviewing process. These materials improve transparency because they provide evidence of your analytic decisions. Appendix may also include supporting study materials. For example, you may include a blank participant information sheet, a blank consent form, a blank debrief sheet, an ethic form, or an interview schedule. These materials help readers understand how the study was conducted. For example, an interview schedule shows the questions used during data collection. A participant information sheet shows what information was provided to participants before they agreed to take part. Appendix can also provide evidence of how research decisions were made. For example, you may include a table showing how several initial codes were organized into candidate themes. You may also show how two similar themes were combined or how a broad theme was divided into more specific themes. In the quantitative research, appendix may include additional statistical outputs such as SPSS outputs if that is required. However, there is one important rule. Do not place essential information only in an appendix. If readers need the information to understand your study, you must explain it in the main body. For example, the method section should explain how the analysis was conducted. You should not place the full explanation in the appendix and simply ask reader to find it there. Similarly, the analysis section should present and interpret the main things. The things should not appear only in the tables in the appendix. The appendix supports the main report. It does not replace it. When deciding whether something belongs in an appendix, ask yourself two questions. First, does the reader need this information to understand my report? If the answer is yes, explain it in the main text. Second, does the materials provided useful supporting detail or evidence? If the answer is yes, it may also be included in the appendix. Once you have selected the appropriate materials, you need to organize and label them clearly. Appendix should appear after the reference list. Each appendix should begin on a new page. At the top of the page includes the appendix label and a clear title. The appendix label and title should be centered and bold. If your report contains more than one appendix, label them using capital letters. For example, Appendix A, Appendix B, Appendix C. If your report contains only one appendix, label it simply as appendix. Do not label a single appendix as Appendix A. Each appendix should also have a clear title. The title should tell the reader exactly what the appendix contains. For example, Appendix A, Interview Schedule; Appendix B, Candidate Themes Table; Appendix C, Thematic Map. The appendix should be ordered according to when they are first mentioned in the main body. For example, imagine that you first mention the interview schedule in the method section. Later, you mention the candidate themes table in the analysis section. The interview schedule should therefore be Appendix A. The candidate themes table should be Appendix B. Do not arrange the appendix alphabetically according to their title. Do not arrange them according to the order in which you create the materials. The order should follow the order of the callouts in the main body. A callout is where you mention an appendix in the main text. Each appendix should be mentioned at least once. Do not include an appendix without referring to it. Readers may not understand why the materials has been included. When you mention an appendix, explain what the reader will find there. For example, you can write, the interview schedule is presented in Appendix A. You can also write, a collected codes table showing the development of the candidate themes is provided in Appendix B. This is clearer than simply write see Appendix B. It explains what the appendix contains and why it is relevant. You should use a capital letters when referring to the specific appendix. For example, write Appendix A rather than Appendix A, a small case. You should also check that every callout matches the correct appendix. For example, if the main text states that the interview schedule is in Appendix A, Appendix A must contain the interview schedule. If you add, remove, or reordered your appendix, remember to check all the callouts again. The process can therefore be understood in 4 steps. First, mention and supporting materials in the main body. Second, label the appendix according to the order of first mention. Third, place the appendix after the reference list and begin it on a new page. Finally, give the appendix a clear and descriptive title. Even though appendix appears outside the main body of the report, the same ethical responsibility still apply. Appendix must follow ethical and confidentiality requirements. Placing information in appendix does not make it acceptable to include confidential or identifiable information. First, do not include signed consent forms. Signed consent forms contain participant signatures. They may also contain other personal information. These are confidential research records. They should be stored securely and should not be submitted as part of your report. Second, do not include participant names or contact details. This includes names, email addresses, telephone numbers, or home addresses. You should also remove information that could identify a participant indirectly. For example, a transcript may not contain the participant name. However, it may mention their employer's job title, location, or a unique personal experience. These details may still make the participant identifiable. Third, do not include identifiable information from transcripts. Any transcript extract, including an appendix, must be carefully anonymized. You may use participant numbers or pseudonyms instead of their real names. You should also check the transcript for identifying detail within the participants' responses. Fourth, do not include unnecessary raw data. An appendix is not a storage space for everything collected during the study. It only includes material that is directly relevant to the report and permitted by the assessment requirements. For example, you may not need to include a complete focus group transcript. If your purpose is to demonstrate how the coding was conducted, an anonymized coding table or a selected transcript section may be more appropriate. Fifth, do not include materials that have not been anonymized. Before adding the transcripts, coding table or theme development documents, you need to check it carefully. Removing names, locations, context details, and any other identifiable information. You should also check for comments or track changes or document information that may reveal confidential details. Finally, do not include appendices that are irrelevant to the topic. Every appendix should support something discussed in the main body. Adding unrelated material does not strengthen your reports. It can make the work appear unfocused and make the relevant information harder to find. There are some materials that you may include if they are required. This includes blank consent form, blank debrief sheets, and blank participant information sheets. The word blank is important. These documents should not contain participant names, signatures, or complete responses. You may also include anonymized study materials such as an interview schedule. Anonymized coding tables, candidate themes table, and thematic map may also be included. Before submitting your report, check each appendix using three questions. First, is this appendix relevant to reports? Second, is it clearly labeled and mentioned in the main body? Third, has all identifiable or confidential information been removed? If the answer to any of these questions is no, the appendix should be revised and removed. To summarize, appendix contains support information that is relevant but too detailed for the main body of the report. They may include study materials, coding tables, and evidence of things development. However, appendix should not replace essential explanations in the main body. Each appendix should begin on a new page after the reference list. It should have a clear label and title. It should also be mentioned in the main body in the correct order. Most importantly, all appendices must follow ethical and confidentiality requirements. Do not include signed consent form, signed participant details, identifiable data, or unnecessary materials. Only include information that is relevant, anonymized, and appropriate for the reports.